Hey, this is Dr. Stan. Our guest is Bob Chapman from the International Forecaster. Our telephone number, 1-888-24-LIBERTY. 1-888-24-LIBERTY or 464-8295. And certainly give us a call. But right now, Bob, I want you to tell our listeners how they can get your newsletter and how they can get more information about what you're doing and hopefully subscribe to the International Forecaster.
Well, the forecast is about business, finance, economic, social, and political issues all over the world. We publish by email on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Runs around 40 pages each time. We have a hard copy that goes out twice a month for those who are not on the Internet. If you'd like to get a free current introductory copy, you can go to one of three places. You can go to the site, theinternationalforecaster.com, theinternationalforecaster.com. You can email us, especially if you have a question. We answer everybody. We help everybody. That address is bob@intforecaster.com. That's bob@intforecaster.com. Or you can call toll-free 800-375-4188, 800-375-4188, and all the things that you have to know about what's going on in the world every week is in that publication.
All right, fine. Well, if you're out there in the audience and you'll have a question for Bob, our telephone number, 1-888-24-LIBERTY or 464-8295. 1-888-24-LIBERTY or 464-8295. Well, apparently some people are beginning to call for additional funding. Certainly Joseph Stiglitz, as you commented in your latest newsletter, Joseph Stiglitz, who is a very good economist, I don't think he understands the conspiracy at all. I'm not sure he understands anything about Austrian economics, but certainly I think his appraisal of the war over in the Middle East is very, very good. He calls it the $3 trillion war that we can't afford. And how are we going to be able to continue certainly waging war throughout the world where we don't have any money to do it with? He's saying, well, we're going to need another stimulus to keep the economy from collapsing. So do you think they're going to try to come up with another stimulus? And do you think that they're going to be able to get Congress to appropriate more money when it should be obvious that we're just digging the hole deeper and deeper and deeper?
Well, a year ago, I said that they would be back probably by the end of this past year for an additional $500 billion. And I think that they will. And I think they'll get it, the administration. And it's not going to solve any problems. It's going to continue to delay the inevitable, like all the things Washington and the Federal Reserve and Congress and Wall Street and banking. They're extrapolating, extending things so that the timing for them to pull the plug will be at the most propitious point. And so that's what I think they're up to. And yes, I think they're going to get it. And I think that the Fed is going to use the TARP money to do that, along with buying increased amounts of treasuries. And you know that the Treasury Department is desperate for buyers because last year 80% of the treasuries were purchased by the Fed, has no money. They created the money out of thin air, so all that monetization went through. And they also bought about $500 billion worth of agency securities, which is Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie, and FHA. And they also bought $800 billion worth of toxic garbage, CDOs, collateralized debt obligations bonds, which hold residential real estate mortgages. And between now and March, they're going to buy another $300 billion. And one week they say they're going to cut the program off, and the next week they say they're going to keep it going. And so there's no way out for them. I mean, they got to keep on printing until they want to pull the plug. And I don't know really whether they want to pull the plug or not. And I'll tell you why. Because just like Stan said earlier, the public is awakening. And they don't know what to do. If they pull the plug, they probably will all be tried and hung for treason if the mob doesn't get them first. If they don't pull the plug, they'll eventually get found out anyway. So they're darned if they do and darned if they don't. And they're in a box and they can't get out. And there's no good end in sight. All of this business of assistance via stimulus, it isn't going to work from a classical viewpoint. I mean, they should have taken down the system 3 years ago, let the banks and the brokerage firms, the insurance companies, and many international corporations go under. Like General Electric is a good example. And you saw what happened to GM and AIG. Now the taxpayer owns them, and they'll lose all their money. And so this is what we're facing. There is no end to it. And, you know, people say to me, well, what do I do with what money I have? I said, the only safe place I know to go is gold and silver-related assets. And that's the end of it. Nothing else is safe. Of course, it's more important because you may lose your job if you're fortunate enough to still have one when we get 22.5% of the people in the country unemployed. And so you should be putting away dehydrated and freeze-dried foods, as well as have a filter for water and a method to defend you to your family. And after that, you worry about what you're going to do with your money.
And, of course, your suggestion is to get that money into gold and silver.
Absolutely.
Somebody had likened what's going on today to the family that was head over heels in debt, so they came up with a wonderful plan. They were going to get out of debt by simply borrowing money from their Visa and Discovery cards, and, of course, using that money to pay off their debts, and then they wouldn't have a problem. Well, how long can you keep doing that? That's exactly what the Federal Reserve System is doing today. They're actually lending money to banks and lending money to other central banks to buy off our debt, and that way, of course, it solves the problem. But it's only a very temporary solution because one day they're going to have to pay all this money back, either that or the whole system comes down. Our telephone number, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295. And if you were to try to get out of debt by borrowing money on your Visa card, why, you'd know what was going to happen sooner or later. Hi, Kevin from Ohio. How you doing?
Just fine tonight, Stan. Thank you very much for accepting my call, and you too, Bob. Bob, I wonder, with Bernanke's reappointment up before Congress now, if that wasn't the cause of the stock market downturn last week. And also, I mean, they're just running through scare after scare right now to illustrate how important he is. When he's just a front man, bag man, thief that's real accomplished at being belligerent. And secondly, I wondered if you would question where last year he proposed that that new regulations would be put in force about how audits would be done in the future on the Federal Reserve. Thank you. I'll take that answer offline.
All right.
Well, they intend to have no audits whatsoever. As I said earlier in the program, the Republican National Committee supplied the money to pay off the likes of Dodd and the rest of them, so that the 1207 would be extracted from the appropriations bill.
Now, for our listeners, 1207 is the legislation that would allow for the audit of the Fed. That's the last thing they want, is for the American people to know how they're stealing money from us and from generations yet unborn. So basically it's all going out in bribes. And certainly if you and I were to try to bribe a congressman, it would be illegal. When the Republican Party bribes congressmen and senators, that's all right. You give them money to their campaign, and then, of course, when they retire, they can keep the money, and they don't even have to pay any income tax on it. Isn't that nice? Sure wish I could do that. But go ahead. Anything else you'd like to say before we go to Tony, who's calling from Spokane?
Stan? Hello?
I guess not. Hi, Tony. How you doing? Okay, there's Tony calling from Spokane. Go ahead, Tony.
Well, I've got a question for Bob. This might sound off topic, but I don't really think it is. There has been a sort of a debtor revolt as of late. People are getting foreclosed, and they're demanding to see the promissory notes. The promissory notes have been destroyed, and the banks have done so for not quite sure what reason, but they set up a holding company called MERS,